All right, hello everyone. Looks like we're live. So I'm joined again with Mike Manfredi from the Clarion team. This is a bi-weekly update from Mike. And so we have basically every week there's an update from the Clarion team. We have Brandon Fancher also from the team. He'll be here. He was here last Tuesday. He'll be here next Tuesday. And this week we've got Mike. So, we've got some, that might be me. I'm hearing myself. Get rid of that. Sorry, I heard myself talking due to having a screen. That is the worst. Very hard to focus on yourself twice. So so Mike's got some updates for us. I'll pass it right over and he can let us know what they've been up to and let us know how things are coming along for the programmatic side of Eden On EOS.
All right. Thanks, Chris. All right, everyone. Let's look through. I have very, very small updates today. So this would be just a quick update, and then we'll get on to a really in-depth conversation that I hope you enjoy because I did not prepare it at all. We have our standard format for these talks, announcements, updates, and then in this case, discuss Fractal Governance and Eden. Today we'll be talking about a particular topic and doing Q&A on that topic. So please do jump in with your questions. Disclaimer, we move fast. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. Stuff that's not polished is because we're working instead of polishing presentation material. Stuff we say here, we may change in a week or two, blah, blah, blah. You guys have heard that plenty of times. These are resources we want to make sure are out there, so we repeat these every week. If you want to find out about Eden on EOS, you can visit edeneos.org. That'll be the gist of a little bit about Eden, obviously, but also about the effort of Eden on EOS specifically. Public Eden Wiki. We have a Notion Wiki at wiki.eoscommunity.org. You'll find all kinds of information there. It may seem a little hard to navigate initially, but just get the lay of the land, and there's actually quite a bit pretty well organized in there. And then the Eden GitHub. If you're a developer or you're willing to venture out into the forest of esoteric things, you can check out our GitHub page, our GitHub repo, or org, whatever this is. And you'll find the projects, you'll find the issues, you'll find ongoing work. So that's the place to go for technical stuff. Awesome. I sounded so technical when I said that. That's really good. I definitely need more coffee this morning. So no particular announcements. So we'll go on to updates. Eden a trial election. So I think I said this last week. I just want to make sure everyone knows the trial election 2 rewards did go out to everyone. So everyone has you now have your budgets and you can start acting with your budgets. Election 1 rewards. I wanna just clarify. Dan, this wasn't said everywhere, so not everyone even knows this is how this was going to work. But I think there was a talk that Dan did. I think it was right before the trial or right after the trial election, the first trial election, where he said that he wanted to give 10 EOS to anyone who became a rep. So the first level of representatives should have gotten 10 EOS the way they got in trial election 2. That was a mix of confusion, oversight, and then us just keeping that on the task list so we made sure it got done. So that's not done. I'm trying to get a list of those people. I'll just go watch videos and rederive that list if needed. But that is on our list, and we will get those 10 EOS out to representatives from the first trial election. Sorry for that oversight and confusion. And then dev trial. So we we have deployed a version of the contract to the testnet, and we are exercising that. We don't have enough together to actually run an election, but we are moving the contract through the points in the election and wiring up the UI. So it's actually really exciting because we're finally getting to see the UI that we've been working on for a month or so actually interact with the contract and show data, and it's pretty exciting. So yeah, that work is moving fast.
Yeah, well, Brandon's update last week, he showed us real time how you'd vote through that UI, and it shows you the tally, and and it has the consensometer
Yep.
at the top. It was pretty slick. It looked awesome.
We have innovated a little bit in the consensometer. We had a part. It's really interesting because how we're doing this math. I've been telling the team this is a very foreign idea. Fractal governance is foreign. When you're interacting with a group of people through the web, you can't see. You don't see, like, we don't even have yet the political playoff, like the tournament display. So getting your place in the organization, getting your place in the world is challenging to communicate. And especially if they haven't read the book, if they're new to EOS, if they're new to the community, we're really looking for how do we make sure people don't get lost? How do we make sure that the UI meaningfully communicates what we're doing? And man, the consensometer was a challenge. We found a couple of scenarios where we're like, well, but wait, what about this and what about that? So I think we came up with a really, really nice design in the end. So I'll be excited for Brandon to show you that next week.
Awesome, yeah, and even just the advancement on the idea, if you get pre-sorted into your rooms and you're expecting to have 4 people there, but all of a sudden 2 aren't there, or due to technical issues, what happens if their Zoom cuts out, or nothing malicious, just they're not there? Does that mean no one moves on from that round? So they have that math built in where at least if those 2 people, it's technically not, you need 3 out of the 4 to move forward, right? If you're really to do greater than 60%. So the fact that you can now, if there's consensus of who's there, then the other votes are just added basically to what the consensus of who's remaining was.
Yeah,
pretty clever.
Yeah, it's as is a thing in software frequently with us software engineers. I'm not excluding myself. We tend to be clever to the point of causing trouble for other people to understand. So I'm glad we just hashed it out until we came to something that made the right trade-off technically, so that we could achieve what we wanted to achieve, but also display it in the UI in a way that we thought people could relate to pretty easily.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's pretty intuitive too. It makes a lot of sense, the way that I think your solution to that problem.
Good. Glad to hear that. All right, so what's next? Clarion. So just a short Clarion update. We don't have any Magic Todd demos today. The in-browser WASM thing that we have demonstrated 2 weeks ago, that is being boxed up. So we're aiming to use that in Eden at some point. I don't believe we'll get it for 0.2, but that'll start to give us a solution. Man, it covers so many things. I'll let Brandon talk about how we'll use it. As far as what it'll provide, this will start to take data that we currently have to keep pinging the public EOS RPC to get this data. That's a lot of, well, it's not a ton of traffic. It's a lot of traffic for us, and someone's got to provide that bandwidth. And so being able to get that data fewer times and then query it from the browser is going to be a really cool speed increase into the user experience. Will be much more responsive, and it'll require fewer pings to the RPC, which is pretty cool. So we're working on boxing that up so we can use that.
Cool.
We also, Steven, I don't think we've talked about as often. Steven's another of our rockstar tech guys on the blockchain team. He is taking the Clarion. He's taking the Clarion picture that I've kind of tried to put in a slide, which maybe we should do. I don't think we did that slide. Maybe we should do that slide at some point. I tried to take the overall picture of all the things Dan has talked about and put that in a slide so we can say, what is Clarion? That slide is what I've been speaking from in these updates when people have asked Clarion questions, because there's just so much involved. I needed to organize it. Well, there's a lot that is either in the slide that technically doesn't really have a solution yet, or stuff that's not in the slides. So Stephen has taken on the task of looking at that overall picture and the intention of the technology and identifying where are the gaps and what's the nature of those gaps, and to the degree we can now start to solve those problems. So that's really exciting, because we knew that parts of this would work based on existing thinking, and other parts would really need some innovation and thinking. And he's doing some great work to kind of organize that effort and ask the right questions so that we can close that gap. So that's in progress too.
Great. Well, nice. And people have asked, when Clarion versus Eden, like, these aren't really necessarily the same thing, but they're tied. Like, so some of the work that you guys are doing, the Clarion team is doing for Eden OS, will spill over into Clarion, right? But it's just, right now the focus is Eden OS, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think the more we organize this, there's a potential that we have 3 or 4 different technologies that we split the Clarion name into, or we make a sub name, or okay. There's a lot to it, and I think how we use it may inform some of that. So yeah. So I'll pause here if anyone wants to jump in quick on Clarion. I know we did a lot of Q&A on Clarion recently, but if you're new to the channel or you have new questions, please go ahead.
Here's a question from Nova Crypto. Have you begin to integrate WebRTC with Clarion OS?
Have we begun to? No. That's the direct answer. But let me assume that you would like to know a little more than that. So we have explored WebRTC and looked at it as the primary technology for the peer-to-peer connectivity. But that's probably about it at this point. We've worked on the more at hand, immediately useful pieces of Clarion. But yeah, that's WebRTC is a big one on our tech investigation.
I'm not even sure what WebRTC is, but I'm going to assume all the tech folks out there know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and let's assume not everyone's a tech person. So WebRTC is a technology Google developed, real-time communication. Okay. It's a peer-to-peer communication. So normally when I actually have to specifically think of a client that doesn't use it now, Zoom, right? When you use Zoom to connect, or the platform we're using to do this live stream, you've got a server. So both people who are trying to connect, they both connect to the server and they talk through the server.
Okay.
WebRTC is a means of us talking to a server only to find each other directly, and then we can stream to each other directly. So there is no server after that initial connection.
Oh.
So it's a potential. It enables certain peer-to-peer connectivity, and it's the first thing we went to see if it would serve the needs of Clarion.
Gotcha.
And I guess for the little more background on that is Google Hangouts or Meet or whatever we're calling ourselves these days. I know Hangouts uses it. I think Meet uses it. Skype, I don't think uses it, but it does have similar technology built in where you're going peer-to-peer. So it's actually really cool. And Jitsi is peer-to-peer. So when you're video conferencing, if you're not technical and you don't know the trade-offs that need to happen, you may be working over a WebRTC enabled platform without knowing it.
So Clarion will do that. It sounds like it makes sense because we're trying to skip this central middleman of sorts that would be the dependency for comms.
Yeah, Clarion will certainly be going peer-to-peer, but there are other options. There's actually some pretty esoteric options that if you look at mesh networks, and there's something called ZeroNet, FreeNet, they have custom algorithms for discovery. I think their protocols even to do the base communication are different. So there are other options, but WebRTC is kind of the huge, well-developed, supported by Google technology. So it's kind of the go-to, let's see if we can make this work first.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Yeah, a few more comments from Patrick on that. Just Clarion will want to deliver real-time communication peer-to-peer, different consortiums, and it is 3WC standard and not IPFS.
Yeah. Oh, is that last part a question about Clarion at the IPFS piece?
No, I don't think so. It's more just a statement.
Okay.
But if there's something you want to talk about that's related to that, by all means.
That's getting off into the skinny branches of the future. So let's just move on as long as I've answered the question.
All right, sure.
All right, so let's jump back here. It's Clarion. All right, Fractal Governance. So yeah, let's just jump rather than Q&A. Chris and I kind of pivoted right before we jumped on, so that this slide is really no longer relevant. All right, so let me reshare.
Something new and exciting about the Eden OS interface itself and the UI, and yeah, this is great to see more of it.
So before I put the eye chart on the screen, let's give you a little background. Chris said, do you have any particular topics you want to cover today? And I said, no, not really. I have a few updates and then, Q&A or whatever. I'm happy to talk about anything, but I don't have anything particularly pressing or that I know the community wants to know. So I kind of went through my mental list of options, and one of them, he was a line that everybody would probably find interesting, but I have not prepared it. This is literally just a document I'm opening and sharing. It's in Mike Chicken Scratch, which is ugly, but
it's not handwritten, so that we can read it at least.
Yeah, if it were handwritten, they would be completely unusable. But yeah, so this is when this is arbitration, right? This is our initial thinking on arbitration, and we've applied it specifically to the profile, contesting a profile, reporting a profile. So if an Eden profile is reported, what happens to deal with that? And the main thing we're trying to deal with in this document is what we've called the flow of funds. So there's a process of arbitration. There's multi-steps in that process. There's many outcomes to that process. And we want to try to map as different participants stake money in that process, and then as participants get paid out, what does all that look like? Because you can hand wave and talk about it, which is what a lot of us do, but when you actually lay out all the details, you'll get to a scenario and be like, well, wait, that distribution makes no sense. Or, oh, with the number of people, we just don't have enough money to properly compensate this group of people. So this is that attempt to lay out the entire process and consider if the system serves all the participants involved. So let's share this. Y'all get ready. Here comes ugly. Let's see.
I didn't think it looked that bad, so you're being hard on yourself.
Okay, well.
All right, here it is.
Okay, so think of it in columns and left to right. So it flows this way, and then this way, and then this way. And I haven't looked at this for a little while too, so I'll stumble through this with you. Member gets invited, report a bad profile, and then you've got two resolutions that can happen at this level. The invitee or the witness made a mistake, right? That's scenario number one. The resolution, witnesses made a mistake and correct the mistake.
Actually, can we, before we get too far ahead, even just starting
Sure.
in the very first box, I see there's a new change to the process, and that is the inviter and the witnesses stake 10 EOS. That's new to the process, eh? So when you invite someone to Eden now, there is some actual skin in the game as part of the invite process, not just the new invitee who has to pay 10 EOS.
Right. Yeah. So let me cover the flow just so you know what all this gobbledygook is, and then we can get into to the details, because there's going to be a lot of questions like that, and they're all really cool and interesting. So let's see, resolution number 1. Witnesses made a mistake and correct the profile. Okay, so this is where it was an honest mistake and the participants correct their own mistake, right? That's number 1. Number 2, invitee fraud, right? Invitee misrepresented themselves to the witnesses. Witness voluntarily evicts themselves. So again, voluntarily, but they're literally taking themselves out of the community.
Okay.
And then the last one, non-resolution, is witnesses contest the report. So they say this profile was improperly reported. And this deals with spamming and kind of harassment from people who have a report button.
Mm-hmm.
And then this whole last column deals with how do you resolve that scenario. And I don't need to go into that because it works the same as this. We've just got scenarios that work a particular way and have a particular problem and solution. So we'll get to this in that same context. The yellow boxes, I'll use this one, which is reasonable. So this is just representing everything that's been put in to the system and who it gets paid out to. Some participants are staking, some are donating, meaning, can never get that money back. And then who does that particular money go to? And the last piece is this piece in bold. This is saying, in the end, the reporter is up 40 EOS. The witnesses are down 10 EOS, and a new member is out 10 EOS. All right, so the whole point of this diagram is, in this scenario, what went in and what was the net? Because we want to make sure the net makes sense, right? For instance, for the scenario where it was an honest mistake, but the reporter reported it and it got fixed, well, we want to reward the reporter. Well, the reporter got 40 EOS, so they got rewarded, so mission accomplished. Mm-hmm. The witnesses lost 10 EOS. Well, as Dan talked about in one of his videos a few weeks ago, it's right in the UI, and actually we added a whole bunch of checkboxes to say, hey, you're supposed to be checking this stuff, and you're supposed to be making sure you got your own stuff right. The witnesses are trying to make sure you got they should be checking you that you got it right, because this is the source of truth in Eden. So we don't want to penalize in some massive way, but 10 EOS from each is kind of like a slap on the wrist. Mm-hmm. We prefer not to have to do it, but it is in fact your job as an Eden member, and we want to incentivize proper behavior.
Yeah,
so
and now when you actually have to put up that 10 EOS as a witness, like now you actually have some, because otherwise there is no skin in the game to be the witness. You're just being asked to do it. You show up in a video, you say I do, and that's your involvement. But now if you actually have to put up 10 EOS, that does give you a little more incentive to double check and prevent some of the need for these resolutions, because there's more looking.
Exactly. Right. The best scenario for all of this is that we never have to use any of these scenarios. Right. So obviously we will, and we need to have this ironed out, but the incentive system hopefully will minimize the use of this entire process.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start at the very beginning, which I hear is a very good place to start. What did I answer your question, and do you have any further questions about the first chunk?
No, it makes sense. Yeah. So the change is now that witnesses and inviters are also putting up 10 EOS. So there's a total of 30 EOS coming in from them, and you can see that staked 30 EOS induct members, and then the new member is going to be putting up 10 EOS. So there's 40 in total on the line there.
Yeah, and partially why we needed to stack it this way to know where the funds came from was that some of you have to represent who put money in and who's getting money out. And so you also then have to know, well, is someone incentivized just by not losing money, or do we want to actually reward them with money? And so splitting this out and laying out this whole scenario like this gave us that insight.
Yeah.
All right, so next step is someone reports the profile. Now the reporter, again, to eliminate spam and harassment, is also going to put up 40 EOS. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be staked. So it's not paying. It's stake he'll get back if he's reporting honestly.
And I suppose it's worth just mentioning for those who are new, what is a good or bad profile. And essentially, the profile consists of a photo. So you can have a good or bad picture. That has come up where we did have one member join based on their well-known Telegram photo. And it's a photo that they're certainly known for, but it wasn't of them. It was a chestahedron with some stars and stripes. So it wasn't their face. And that's a bad, like the NFT that gets minted has to be a picture that looks like the individual and their likeness. It can't be wearing glasses. They need to be enough of their face you can actually see them, a big enough picture of their face you can actually tell it's them as opposed to much in the distance. So that's one piece, right, Mike? And then there's the actual the details of the profile itself, which are links to your social media, your Telegram handle, your actual EOS account has to be correct. Twitter, if you
here's an actual profile if you'd like to share that.
Let me go back here. Yeah, that would.
This is a real live profile.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Actually, this is a terrible example because the image didn't load.
That would be something. That would be someone who could, right?
Well,
right.
and that's likely my internet connection, but we'll, this is a better representation.
And there you go. So you can see Slava, very clear picture of his face, and it's up then to the invitees to confirm that the person that showed up in the video with them to do a live video, basically they're a testament to following through with the peace treaty and having read it, that individual should match this photo, and the invitees are supposed to basically confirm that. Does this look like the guy you just sat in a video with? And then these links here as well. There's a video, the induction ceremony video, could be the wrong video, might get uploaded. And so that needs to be verified, as well as these links need to actually be functional links to the various socials that are provided. And what had happened is some of these just weren't working. People didn't verify the links themselves, and it would mint it, and all of a sudden you have these broken links.
Yeah, so this verification process, if you think 10 EOS is a ridiculous fee, this verification process looks like click, 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 touch on a tab, yep, all that looks right. Click on this, yep, that's our video. Like that's it, right? And why is the image so interesting to us? We're building a community. It's a level of integrity in relationship that we don't typically see online. It was a big deal when the major social media companies started verifying you, like requiring a phone number or doing a 2FA verification or an email check of who you were. We're not doing any of that, and we need to know that the people who are participating, who could spend funds of the community, are real people. And we have this whole process, this whole induction process, to make sure that we're bringing in people that someone in the community already trusts. So this is the means of tying this profile that represents this person is actually that person. So while this stuff is near trivial to verify, it has to be done to maintain that level of integrity.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. Not complicated, like you say, but very important to the process in general and what we're trying to achieve.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's jump back here. There we go. All right. So reporter stakes 40 EOS. Now 40 EOS may also seem like a lot, but once we move into an arbitration scenario, there's going to be people who need to be compensated, or at least there could be in the end, right? This whole last column deals with juries, right? We now can't get a resolution by people coordinating one-on-one, so we need juries. Well, now we're including more people, and we need to compensate those people. We don't have free tax money to pay any number of people for any amount of time to resolve a conflict. We actually need to fund people to do that.
Yeah.
So the 40 EOS ends up, as we go through here, you'll see how it works out, but 40 EOS ends up setting up to pay those people should the reporter be reporting fraudulently.
Is this, you mentioned, so these values are in EOS. Now, this has come up before where what happens when EOS is worth $100?
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be like some sort of scale factor that's going to factor this EOS against some sort of benchmark fiat currency?
I would doubt there's going to be a scale factor. I think we will certainly adjust these values over time.
Okay.
I think the way to think about this now, the use of EOS in the Eden contract right now is pretty minimal. So I think short of EOS hitting the moon, by the end of August, I don't think the value will change enough given, or I don't think the value of that 10 EOS, the value of the amounts that we use in Eden will change so dramatically that it'll tip the scales for anyone.
Sure.
Something like this, it easily could. So for now, I think how I would say to relate to this is these values are just ways of working out this math, and then we can scale it somehow later. And that may just be changing the values as needed, or it could be scaling per fiat, but fiat's not really a great base to scale things by. So
no, I mean that's where it's hard, right? And this is where I think we've seen lots of discussion in the community about these fees and how do we keep them appropriate in different parts of the world. 10 EOS is far more meaningful to someone in, say, Venezuela than it might be to someone in Baja or something, right? So it's
absolutely.
So yeah, well, that's good to know. I mean, the bottom line, it's not that arduous to make this type of change. So perhaps if elections are these invites will happen regardless of an election. So I guess it'll just be a matter of if it seems too steep for someone wants to get invited, then we kind of find some sort of channel to communicate the fact that this has gone up too much. Can we now reduce this to, say, because right now EOS is just call it $5. Even at $10, that now doubles this entry rate. So maybe, yeah, it's more to be discussed, I guess, to figure out a process for that.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that there's multiple variables here. It's not just, is this affordable, right? It's not just dealing with how many people can participate at these prices. We have other things that are going to change as this really rolls out. Right now, we have a single community that works this way on EOS. Well, even once we have a few communities on EOS, somebody may say, well, I want to include everyone, so I'm going to make the induction fee half an EOS. That's fine, but it'll have trade-offs, right? That community will have far, far less in its treasury. That community probably is lowering the bar on who joins, right? The level of commitment of the people who join. Now, they may achieve something distinct, right? There's nothing good or bad about doing that, but it'll be different. That community will have a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side, there will be people who say, this is piddly amounts. We don't even want external funding. We just want to put our own money in. And maybe they put in 1,000 EOS at a time. I think we'll have this variation in communities where communities self-assemble around different rules. So, the other way to look at this is you could look at every one of these numbers as having an X after it instead of EOS, because sure, the member fee is 10 EOS, the member donation is 10 EOS, and the 30 staked EOS here is just 2 witnesses and 1 inviter with the same number, right? This is 4 times it because, look at this, 30 plus 10 equals 40. So it's all just multiples of the same base number that
Sure,
different communities may choose a different value for and choose over time different values.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Like you say, this Eden OS is applicable to this is open source software that you guys are creating. So anyone is going to be welcome to create their own Eden style community if they so choose, and they can play with these variables.
Absolutely. Well, we're 5 minutes from the end, so rather than try to just pile through this thing that could take an hour easy, are there any questions that we want to answer before we wrap up?
One question that came in here from John. I think it's a good one just to get your feeling. Will we use any part of Clarion for the election in September? And just for those, so September was the tentative date that Dan had given us about a month ago as to when he sort of thought the first official election might be. And your disclaimer at the beginning, things change. This is technical development, so timing isn't always as we expect. So I guess 2 questions. Do you think September is still a reasonable time frame based on your view? And then will Clarion be a part of that?
Yeah, September is still definitely reasonable time frame. Clarion is not planned to be any part of that. If the effort to box it up and testing looks good, and we move along pretty well on Eden, we all want it ASAP. So there may be some personal hackathons going on to integrate it somehow. But current plans, no, it's not going to be part of VO2.
Okay, awesome. And then here's another one that, for some people may not realize this did get covered with Brandon Fancher in the past as well. But how can Clarion be integrated with Eden? General question. And then will the elections be held on Clarion instead of Zoom in coming elections? So definitely for the current next set, it's going to be Zoom. We know that. But in the future, what does Clarion look like maybe, and how can it relate?
Yeah, so Clarion is a lot of different things. So since if you're new to this, just know that when we say Clarion, it's just this very hand-wavy set of ideas right now, and actually some initial implementation. So will Clarion be integrated with Eden? Yeah, absolutely. The first piece of Clarion, which is this moving the data serving, maybe you could think about it as moving the database to the browser, so that you don't need to go to the server to get the data. That will be, well, we haven't put it in the timeline, but that could happen in 0.3. And I think as soon as we have that capability, we're going to want to do that, because it just enables all kinds of stuff we can't do right now. So absolutely, one small slice of Clarion, which is not even the most exciting parts of Clarion in the long term, will be integrated into Eden. Will the election be held on Clarion instead of Zoom in coming elections? So Clarion, so I'm going to show my age here, and hopefully all you all either go watch this movie, or hopefully you've seen it. At the end of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Rufus says, "Your music enables communication between all beings, from all humans of different languages to common household pets." Clarion, in the end, is this grand vision that is going to conquer a lot of cool stuff. It's going to be peer-to-peer. It's going to be a communication platform. Will it include video? Probably eventually. I wouldn't doubt that. But we don't have the roadmap mapped out in that detail, at that detail. So
yeah,
I think there's really two, if we stratify that into two different questions. Will we run on technology different than Zoom? Absolutely. In fact, we're not even requiring people to use Zoom. We're providing Zoom as a convenience. But if you know that you can run a Jitsi meeting, make a recording, and upload that recording, that's all you need.
You're good.
Right? Yep. As long as you know how to do that and you can get all the people in your group into that meeting, that's totally fine. So we're not even attached to Zoom at this point.
Yeah.
Can this be run on Clarion is a kind of deep question, in that Clarion has to get far enough to be a platform that interconnects people peer-to-peer, and then has a communication protocol that then supports video. At that point, yep, we can do it on Clarion. And at that point, we'll essentially be running a Jitsi-like, WebRTC-like technology that is Clarion, right? Clarion will work that way. But it's kind of like, if you're familiar with Jitsi or WebRTC-like video conferencing, it's going to be that. And hopefully it'll be better in that Jitsi and a lot of technologies like that, they're not doing any kind of CDN style optimization for mobile, or compression, or any smart. They don't have a server in the middle, so they don't have a lot of smart, oh, your bandwidth is low, let me compress your data or cut out your video so that you still have audio. Like there's not a lot of those smarts that are super convenient in something like Zoom. Mm-hmm. But yeah, short answer, eventually, sure.
That's the right answer, I think. The people who are paying attention, that's what they want to hear. It'll all be on Clarion one day. We just need funding, time, and time.
Yep, exactly. I
Speaking
tell
of
people all
time,
the time, I'm a software engineer, and so the answer is always, well, sure, we can do that. It's just a matter of time and money.
there you go.
So just to wrap up the diagram too, we'll get back to this flow of funds diagram. There's going to be a lot more questions, and the juiciest parts are in the second and third column. So we'll get back to it, I promise. But for now, we're just out of time.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Mike, for your time as always. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. And yeah, you're doing some great work. I know from myself, and I think I represent a lot of the community here. We're really indebted to the work that the Clarion team and yourself and Dan and Brandon, the whole group there. Todd with his great demonstration last week as well. Like, you guys are doing some awesome stuff. So keep it up. We're rooting for you. If you need anything from us, let us know. And we'll look forward to doing it again in a couple of weeks.
I appreciate that. And indebted is not quite the right word, given what you guys are already doing with the system. So it is a mutual relationship. Appreciate all your effort.
Those are the best kind. Mutually aligned incentives all in the same direction, right?
All right, everyone. Have a good one.
Okay, take care. Bye.